I met Costas Manis on a portfolio review. He said to me, the best thing, because I said to him, I struggle with projects and I don't know what to photograph, and I'm always looking for things and for ideas. And he said, it's simple, just photograph your family.
That's a friend of mine in the photographic world, Mark Seymour, who I invited to take a photo walk with me a few weeks back, a show to sit in the middle of these specials whilst I've been away in India. And it's a show today that covers a wide gamut of, I think, human stories as much as photography stories. From talking about family, as you just heard, with one particular family story that's very, very personal to Mark, to travel, to how your creativity changes as you mature with photography, to a chat about books and projects. Suffice to say, I'd like you to feel like you've come with me to just take a meander with Mark, some coffee in hand with a friend. Bring a warm jacket, though. It was a bit bitter for the walking part of our chat. It really was. But it's a conversation I thoroughly enjoyed, and hopefully you will as well. So how are you feeling, by the way, following last week's show? Assuming you do this thing in sequential order, where I talked with Tim Kington about climbing Everest. I think the thing, in fact, I know the thing that buoyed me, enthused me perhaps the most, was the fact that Tim is, whilst having trained to get fit to do it, obviously, Tim is otherwise like you and I. With, of course, the glaring difference that he wanted to take a life risk to summit one of the world's most challenging peaks, which I realise I've made sound like a flippant decision, and if you've heard the show, you'll know it was anything but. I, for one, am left thinking, that's supposed to sound like an interested not in terms of thinking I'd like to climb Everest, I might quickly point out. More that following the show recording, he talked to me for a while about returning to trek to base camp. Because that is an adventure of its own. Maybe not so death-defying, granted, but still very much a life experience in a part of the world not many people will go to. And it was an experience, a life experience I didn't realise until talking with Tim I'd actually rather like to do. Probably follows the PS, which I'll let you hear or go back and listen to or remind yourself of, or listen to fresh, the PS at the end of the show with Brian Blessed, the actor. Sorry, had to do a Brian with that one. But yeah, I thought, God, I'd very much like to do that. I have the acronym YOLO ringing in my ears. You can look it up if you don't know it. You might have thought that comes from my kids, but in actual fact, it's from a mother-in-law who sometime last year picked up this YOLO thing and has been running with it ever since, to the extent she is planning to summit every Costa coffee shop in the world. All 3,861 of them. So my guest today then, Mark Seymour, he really tells you his story from the off, so I don't think I need to do a full bio here, except to say that I've known him since the first couple of years of being a professional photographer, and he was always very supportive in that time. I think of Mark as somebody who has this incredible life experience in terms of making pictures. Mainly he's been what we call a social photographer for his career, but he was the first UK photographer to receive a double fellowship in documentary photography, tick, and his portrait work has been featured in National Geographic, big tick, and the National Portrait Gallery's collection in London, almost missed that, tick, yes. He's also served as one of Nikon UK's first ambassadors, showing, I think, his significant influence in the world of photography, certainly in the UK. So I went to visit Mark a few weeks back and take a photo walk.
Today on the Photo Walk.
There's a picture of me taking a picture of my brother with a box brownie, and I only discovered then that they never bought me film ever. So I had this camera and I just used to click it, and they say, they used to call me David Bailey. That camera gives you access. You don't know if that scene that you were photographing is actually heightened or not yet, because you've gone. It's still there. It's still happening. So always stay with the scene and as long as you can. She goes, I don't want any of them, even for your portfolio. She goes, I don't want any of you to show anyone any colour pictures.
No.
If I couldn't do this, I don't know what I would be doing. I certainly wouldn't have had the richness in my life of being able to photograph the people and the places. This was a difficult picture for me to take. We'd taken Dad into the home. He thought he was just going to visit, but we had to say goodbye to him and leave him in the home. It come about through love. It didn't come about by me saying I'm going to do this project. It wasn't something that I set out to do any of this stuff. It was just photographing my dad.
That's Mark Seymour, my guest on the show today. Welcome along as we make our photo walks together, a show where we walk and we make pictures, photographically sketchbooking our time together each week. Usually I'm rifling through, if that's the correct expression, the mailbag each week as we walk, but for 3 weeks, and we're mid-specials with this one, for 3 weeks I have a series of longer tail interviews and features, and I'm delighted that Mark Seymour is my guest for this particular one. A few hearty thank yous before we lace up those boots. Thank you to those who believe in the podcast enough that you are Patreon members or extra milers, as you know, and to mpb.com, who have sponsored us for one more month. A service I use for buying, selling and trading used camera gear is MPB. As a website platform, mpb.com is the place where I can safely buy, sell and trade quality used photo and video gear online. And online guarantees make this a place I feel safe to buy from, unlike some other marketplaces. Here's how it works. You go online to mpb.com and search for gear that you'd like to add to your kit bag. Or if you're selling gear you no longer need, click the button at the top of the website that says Start Selling and Trading and just follow the very easy instructions. From there, you print off a packing label, stick it on the box with all your gear in it. It's collected by a courier free of charge from your front door. And the best bit, MPB pays you for your camera gear within days. So join me and the hundreds of thousands of photographers every year in the US, Europe and the UK who know that MPB is the place to buy, sell, trade and create. Also this month and next, we're sponsored by Lowa Boots, spelt L-O-W-A, pronounced Lowa. So if you need new boots, then you'll be pleased to know that using the code Photowalk, all one word, on all the W's, lowa.co.uk, you can receive 25% off a price of boots or shoes up to the end of April 2025. Right, on the show today, it's a walk with Mark, so there's no mailbag, as I say, but don't let that stop you writing in, because we'll hit the trail running in a couple of weeks, metaphorically, obviously, with the letters and pictures that you've been sending in of late. But I do have a reminder of this month's brand new one-word assignment set by Claire Thomas. We'll crack straight on then with the show Walking with Mark, but I will just say that there's a part of the show that's it's incredibly personal to Mark and his life today. It's quite a tough story in many respects. So it's light and shade in that part of the show. And following it, you may well wish to comment or write in with your own experience or experiences. And if you do, stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show is the address. Right, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots or shoes, check. Some spare film, maybe an extra SD card, check. I did say it was cold along this path at any rate, so something to keep you toasty as well. Gilets included, check. Well, let's walk. As this episode goes out, Mark, I think I'm going to be in India. This is one of the episodes that's going out while I'm in India with our fellow photo walkers. We'll talk a lot about India shortly, but it's going to be a darn sight warmer than it is today.
That's true. Absolutely true. Yeah, I think it's going to be, what is it? Probably 3 or 4 degrees at the moment, do you reckon?
Yeah, with a wind chill, because they always say in the wind it feels like minus something, doesn't it?
Well, it's definitely going to be, mid-late 20s, I think, when you go to where are you going? Delhi, is it? Delhi
to start with, then on to Jodhpur. So
nice. I love Jodhpur.
The blue city. Anyway,
you don't see a lot of blue around, though.
Do you not?
No.
Oh,
I think it's a bit of a myth.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like Jaipur with the Pink City.
Right.
You know, I think maybe in the old days they used to paint the houses blue to keep the temperature in. But
I think there's one area where it's quite blue.
Yeah,
that's where the photos are done.
Yeah,
I think, but
it's quite a small area. But
yeah.
you'll go there, and it's Jodhpur's lovely.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to it. Right. Isn't that ironic? We've got a
Start.
We've got a start. We've got a sign here. Start. What is this, for the park runs or something?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to run today, though, Neil.
No, I'm up if you are for it. Right, start. Where does this story start, Mark? Where does you're probably, I would say, I've got half a dozen, if that, friends that really go back to my professional photographic start, and you're one of them, actually.
Oh, wow.
But your actual photographic start starts a lot earlier than mine.
Well, as an amateur, I picked my first camera up at 4 years old.
Did
Neil.
you?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have a picture. My mum gave it to me probably about 10 years ago. And there's a picture of me taking a picture of my brother with a box brownie. And I only discovered then that they never bought me film ever. So I had this camera, and I just used to click it, and they used to call me David Bailey, you see, because Bailey was it was big around that time on the TV with the Olympus adverts. But so that's how young I started. So I was kind of always destined to be a photographer.
When did you actually put the film in the camera then? Did you start taking pictures with film at age 14, 10 years later?
Probably, something like that. I remember at 13, 14, going on some school trips, and I definitely took my camera at that point.
Yeah.
I had a Pentax, I think it was an ME Super at that point, and I remember taking that. I've still got the pictures, and they're all in black and white. They look great, nice and grainy, atmospheric.
So, as a profession though, when did it occur to you that you could make some money out of doing this?
It started by luck, really, Neil. I was married, 1986 it was. We were like any other young couple, struggling with a mortgage and all the other sort of things that went with it. We had a child. We were struggling for money, and I don't know why, but I bought the Telegraph newspaper one Thursday, and back in the day, Thursday was Jobs Day in the Telegraph.
Right.
And in the back of the paper, there was this tiny advert, literally one column wide by about 1 centimetre or 2 centimetres. And it said, sell wedding photography.
Sell wedding photography?
Sell wedding photography.
Not do wedding photography?
No, it said sell wedding photography.
Right.
And I applied for it.
Oh.
I went for it. I went for the interview, and I got the job. I mean, basically, it was a commission-only position. And
what we do is selling wedding photography for other photographers.
Well, back in the 80s, the wedding photography scene was totally different than it is now, and it was a big company I was working for called National Weddings. They were later known as Kodak Weddings, and they had 300 photographers going out every weekend, but they had a sales force going out as well. So they would get their leads from Prenuptia, which is a bridal shop, and then I'd ring up in the afternoon and they'd say, you're going here and here, and you had a sample album with God knows whose photographs in it, but they were various photographs from different photographers showing different parts of a wedding day, and I had to go out and sell it and book the bride, and if I didn't book her that night, I didn't get any commission. But I used to do that 3 nights a week, but it was with the view that I wanted to become a wedding photographer. After 6 months of doing that, I said to Jim, who was the head guy there, can you teach me wedding photography? And he said, we get loads, everyone wants to be a wedding photographer. He said, what gear have you got? And I told him. He said, that's no good. He said, well, you have to have medium format. He said, if you want to try, he said, you need to go and buy yourself medium format gear, a light meter, a Metz 45 flash gun.
Oh, those big hammerhead things, yeah.
And he said, go and take 10 rolls of film, bring them back to me. I'll look at them and I'll tell you if you're good enough or not. So I took the 10 rolls of film, and 10 rolls of film is actually quite a lot of photographs when you're an amateur and you haven't got subjects. So I was photographing family and everything. And he looked at them and he just cursory flicked them. He said, yeah, okay. And I actually thought, I would have liked a real nice portfolio review. But anyway, he decided to train me, and he said, we'll start the new wedding season next year. We'll start training you in March for the new season. And sure enough, they did. And I went out with one of their top photographers. And I actually went out with him for 5 weeks. And I would take I had a Rolleiflex, and I'd have it on a tripod, and the guy would take the picture, and I would take the picture next to him. It was basically group photography. Yeah. 5th week comes, and I get a call from Jim and said, Dave, who you've been with, is off sick today. He says, you're doing the wedding on the morning of the wedding.
You're flying solo?
Yep, you're flying solo today. Yeah. He said, have you got your bicycle clips?
What?
He said, your bicycle He said, you'll need them.
Is that an expression, or?
You've not heard that one before?
No.
Okay, you'll have to.
Well, I know what bicycle clips are.
You'll have to look it up.
Right, okay. Right.
Anyway.
I think I know what you mean now. Yeah. Right.
So
I'm going to use that on my kids.
Good one. They won't know what bicycle clips are, will they?
True. Yeah.
So anyway, I photographed the wedding, and I think enthusiasm took me through.
Yeah.
And that was the start, and I started photographing weddings every week for national weddings. And after 3 months, I thought, I'm going to give this a go. And it's one of those light bulb moments where I thought, I'm going to make a go of this. Yeah. So I borrowed some money from mum and dad, £4,000 back in. Yeah. And I had there was a girl who lived 2 doors away from us, who worked for Yellow Pages, and I took out half a page in Yellow Pages.
That would have been 4,000 in itself. Those days.
That was the whole.
That was the.
Oh,
right.
For the year. That's what I.
So you borrowed £4,000
for an advert.
For an advert.
Yep. And this was. I actually did this at the point that I started photographing weddings. So I didn't have any real experience.
No.
And I put this advert in, and I sat down with this girl who I knew very well from Yellow Pages. And we decided to call the company Classic Weddings, right. So I'd be at the front of the directory. Yes. It wasn't going to be OOAA, no. That sort of thing that plumbers used to do in the day. And carried on photographing with national weddings. And because then the phone would start to ring, are you free? And I used to say, I'm sorry, I'm booked, because I didn't feel confident enough to take a wedding on.
Hang on, you spent £4,000 on this advert, but then you were turning weddings down. I'm not sure that your business acumen was quite correct at that point.
That's not sort of thing you go on Dragon's Den and say, look, I've got this business proposal.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was with National Weddings, and I was photographing weddings, and I bought myself a 35mm camera as well. So I'd say to the bride, I'm just going to do a backup.
Right.
So I was then getting my own little portfolio, which I needed to do. So once I got my own portfolio, I just copied National Weddings' album, because I knew no different. I didn't know about any photographers in the big organisations or anything. Never knew any other wedding photographers. There was no internet back then, and so you didn't really mix with other photographers. So I put an album together. I remember, and I look back at it with horror now. I mean, it was an A4 album made of crushed burgundy velvet.
Nice.
With brown overlays inside.
Yeah. That's £4,000 worth.
Absolutely. But anyway, I started getting bookings. And I started taking bookings for 6 months after, later down the road. And that's how it started, basically.
That was the start of the illustrious next however many years. I've done 20 shooting weddings. You've done more than that.
Well, I started when I was 26.
Right.
36, 46.
And you're now 35.
I'm now 35, so I think 42 years.
42 years.
Or 40 years, yeah. So
I'm bound to ask what you've seen. I mean, clearly the equipment has changed, I know that, but
just a tad.
Just a tad. But what's the main difference in terms of the people that you photograph? What have you seen? What's the difference in the clients?
Gosh, that's a difficult one, because my client base has changed throughout my career, and I've been really fortunate in meeting some people or having some really nice venues locally to me. And I was super hungry back in the day, and I used to go back to every venue and show them the pictures. But I got a real big break when I was invited one night to show my pictures to Windsor Camera Club. And I'd photographed a wedding at Cliveden about 4 weeks before.
Which is a very, very posh place.
It's probably...
I proposed to my first wife at Cliveden.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's where Meghan Markle left on her wedding day.
Ah.
But yeah, it's crazy expensive there. It's
tell me about it, yeah.
Yeah. They've just put their prices up. I think it's, to say hello now, it's 90,000.
Good Lord.
Yes, but anyway.
Yeah, all I did was book a table for a tea in the afternoon.
A jolly nice tea, I bet it was too. Yeah, and it's, yeah. But I photographed this wedding at Cliveden, and I went back to Cliveden 2 weeks later, and I spoke to Michael, who was the wedding event organiser, and I said, do you want to see my work? Can you recommend me? And he just said, no, he says, we've got our recommended suppliers. He said, we'll be in touch, and just flipped me off basically. And I thought, well, fair enough, you win some, you lose some. And when I was presenting at the camera club, I put a couple of pictures up of this wedding at Cliveden, and there was a guy in there who worked at Cliveden. He's still there to this day. Guido, his name is. He's the concierge there. And he said, I work there. And I told him the story about Michael and them sort of dismissing me. And he said, give him a ring tomorrow. He said, I'll make sure he sees you. And I phoned up Michael in the morning, and Michael invited me in. And that was in 1987. And I've been on Cliveden's recommended supplier list ever since.
Can I get on that list? In terms of your career as a photographer, in terms of the professional bit anyway, it's mainly been weddings, hasn't it? Or has it been a bit of portrait work and a bit of commercial, or is it mainly weddings?
I would say mainly weddings. 80%, 90% weddings. I mean, I've done a bit of travel in, previously. I've done a few portraits, but they've all come from weddings.
Yeah. I struggled during my career, and I'm still actually a wedding photographer, and you are as well. We don't shoot as many weddings as we used to, but I did struggle sometimes with with being a wedding photographer. Sure. And it's very unfairly looked down upon by many genres.
I totally agree with you. In fact, last year I've virtually taken every wedding picture off of my website. I've got one small section on wedding photography, and I'm about to change that again. It's just black and white wedding photography. That's all I'm going to offer. So if someone wants it, they do. If they don't, I'm not really troubled with it. But I totally agree with you. It's I was fortunate enough when I was a Nikon ambassador to get a job with National Geographic, and I've only ever done one job for them, and it was in Kolkata. When you talk to people and they say, what do you do? If you say I'm a wedding photographer, or people say, oh, do you do weddings? Yeah. Because they assume that's what every kind of photographer does. Yeah. But when you say to people, or they say, what do you do? And you say, well, I do travel photography. I've done some stuff for National Geographic. Straight away they go, oh, wow. Yeah.
You're a proper photographer.
Absolutely. and it's really, really strange that someone thinks that about a documentary or someone that has got that magazine that I took some photographs for. And in fact, when you do a shoot for National Geographic, you wouldn't do them normally. I mean, the pay's lousy.
You actually had a Magnum photographer say to you, stick at weddings, Mark, because it earns more than we do.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's from Magnum.
How ironic. Yeah. But we're all there, and we all want to do the documentary stuff. We all want to be published. We all want to book. We all want to do all these things. And yet, at the end of the day, weddings are very, very lucrative if you get in the right market.
I've paused because you told me something in the car, and it's a story I'd love you to tell, but I'm not sure whether you feel comfortable telling it or want to tell it. The particular bride who asked you to photograph her wedding only in black and white. And the reason I want you to tell the story is it does involve a photographer who's been past many years now, but it involves somebody who had a lot of respect for you. Yeah,
poor Bob Carlos Clark. Yeah. It was a dear friend of mine. And
just drop that one in, clang.
Yeah, what he was. No, and I met Bob through chairing the London Portrait Group, and I approached him to speak to the group. Yeah. And after many to-ins and fro-ins, he agreed to come and talk to the group, and that's how we became friends. And we were friends for many years. We'd go out drinking and end up falling over at the end of the night. And
with Bob Carlos Clark.
Yes, yeah. And Bob introduced me to Patrick Litchfield and John Stoddart and all these people. So it's kind of a bit of a glorious period in my photographic career. But anyway, Bob unfortunately is no longer with us. But his wife, Lindsay Carlos Clark, who I also knew because of Bob, approached me and just said, "Will you be our wedding photographer?" And she goes, "I've been talking to Bob's agent, and we know so many photographers, but she says they're all portrait or fashion photographers." And she goes, "I don't want that at my wedding day. I want someone who just tells a story
and reads it, can read a wedding."
And she said, "Bob always used to wax lyrical about your black and white wedding photography." And she goes, "Would you photograph it for us?"
Wow.
And I said, "I'd love to." She goes, "Yeah, but there's a couple of rules that I just want you to know about before you say yes." And she goes, "The first one is, I never ever want to see any of my pictures in colour. I only want all my wedding done in black and white only." And she goes, "I don't want any of them, even for your portfolio." She goes, "I don't want any of you to show anyone any colour pictures."
No, none at all.
And I said, "That's fine, no problem at all." And she goes, "The other rule is, I don't want any pose pictures on the day." She goes, "Well, maybe just one." She goes, "We'll stand there together, Andrew and I." She goes, "We'll look at you and look at each other and just take a picture of that." And she goes, "That's it. And the rest of the day, I trust you. You just document it as you see and capture what goes on."
Amazing.
And what was nice is after I delivered the pictures, I mean, go back to the wedding. I mean, it was a fantastic wedding, and it's a wedding that as photographers we'd all love to photograph. It was a very rock and roll wedding. There were some real colourful characters there. And it was in a nice venue, so everything kind of come together. Beautiful weather. Anyway, but I delivered the pictures to her. I took them up to the gallery, and she absolutely loved them. And about a week later, she just said, "I know we paid you, but I'd like to make a gift to you." She said, "I know you love Bob's work." She goes, "Why don't you come up to the little black gallery in Chelsea and choose a couple of prints off the wall?" So I did that, and they're in my house now on my wall. So those prints are.
Oh, fantastic.
Before we return to this week's show, my thanks to those who keep us walking each week, such as our patrons. You know who you are. And now arthelper.ai for the next few months. If you've ever thought about selling your photography online but haven't a clue where to start, I think Art Helper could probably help you, because it's made for people like us. Here's how it works. You upload a photo, magically and instantly professional content is made for you, such as social media posts, email newsletters, even full Substack articles, all in your own voice. It can also generate hundreds of mock-ups for every image you upload, things like your work framed, so people get a real understanding of what your photograph could look like on their wall. It helps you connect with the right buyers and even suggests pricing based on your market. And unlike most AI tools, it has an art protection guarantee, which means something very important: your images are never used for AI training. Free to try, and Art Helper is giving our listeners a special deal. Go to arthelper.ai, use the code Photowalk, and get 30 days free of the pro version. I'll have a link on the show page. It's a great way to start selling your art or growing the business you already have. And thank you, arthelper.ai, for your belief in this show.
For many photographers, Mark, the holy grail moment is when they become an ambassador. I've never been fortunate to hold anything quite so esteemed. You have, with Nikon.
Yes, and it all came about again through the London Portrait Group. Nikon sponsored the London Portrait Group for many years, and then I got a call one day from their marketing director, and she said, "Will you photograph my wedding?" And
weddings are a very good way of getting stuff, aren't they? It's the networking through weddings is quite incredible.
But I photographed her wedding, and I went over the top. I mean, I took a second photographer, even though she didn't want one. And I just thought, I can't get this wrong. And because, it was Nikon. I wasn't an ambassador at that time, but there's 30 or 40 people there who work for Nikon. Nikon was sponsoring the group, and effectively there was lots of people there that knew about cameras, but maybe not about photography. And I thought, I've got to get it right. I can't mess this up. So I'd sort of doubled down on everything. And anyway, she was delighted with the pictures. And 6 months or so later, I got a phone call from her and she said, we'd like to talk to you. And I said, what's that about? And she goes, we just need to talk to you about a few things. And I'm sort of thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Have I upset them, or has something happened, or whatever? And anyway, come the day, we met in this restaurant in Oxford, and there was 3 directors there, and we just had a general chat and something to eat. And she said, anyway, she goes, the reason we've called you here, she goes, we're starting an ambassador program. And she goes, we want 5 ambassadors in the UK to represent Nikon. And we want one in the wildlife arena, and one in whatever the sports arena, one in nature, and we want one in social photography, particularly weddings. And she goes, as you've won Wedding Photographer of the Year a couple of times, and you've...
Just drop that one in.
Thank you. And you've... it was a long time ago now, Neil. And
you keep dropping these surprises on me.
I thought you knew these things.
Some of this stuff, I thought I knew you well. Clearly not that well.
Anyway, she just said, we'd love you to be an ambassador and represent us. And she goes, this is the package. And she rolled out this package that basically let me have as much gear as I want for a year.
Oh, so they gave you the gear as well?
Oh, yeah. They give us the gear. There was a proviso. You had to buy the gear back off them at the end of the year, but for a penny. So that you'd bought it. But
it sounds like a good deal to me.
It was amazing. It was amazing. So, I got a D4 and a couple of lenses, and anyway, it was lovely. But I had to write a report for them, once a month, and tell them anything I'd done on social media and all that sort of thing. And that went on for 3 years. We did that. So every year the contract would be renewed, and you'd get another load of gear and all that. So it was lovely. And after 3 years, they just said, we're going to be changing things around. We're going to be changing the ambassadors. We want you to become now a friend of Nikon. Right. So we're still going to keep a link on our page to your website. You can still enjoy benefits of getting some family or friend discounts. Yeah.
But no longer no longer one. No, I was going to say 4p, but 1p kit across 4 years.
No, not anymore. That disappeared. But I had so much gear that I kind of I've got all this gear. I don't need any more gear at that point anyway.
No.
But it was lovely. But that wasn't the point of it. Anyway, Nikon ended it. And I'm still friends with them today. But it became a point where I moved over to Sony because I know it's that swear word. And I only moved over to Sony because Nikon were late to the game with mirrorless, and as soon as the Sony A9 came out, I just jumped on the bandwagon, and it's an amazing camera and system.
That's why I moved to Fujifilm originally, because Canon, who I was with for many years, very loyal to Canon, it just seemed to be, why won't you do the mirrorless kit? It took forever. There is an important part of the Nikon relationship, though. That's where you start your travel photography, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so part of the ambassador program was that they wanted you to train their photographers or do training courses. But there was one slight problem in that the manager of the training department was an ex-wedding photographer. And he said to me straight away, he says, you can't do wedding courses. He said, because I do them, and that's under our cost centre. So he said, why don't you do street photography?
Had you been a street photographer at that stage?
Doing a little bit, nothing major. So I started running some street photography courses, only in London. And they were successful because Nikon were promoting and they were selling the courses through their database, which you guys imagine is huge. And then...
how many people on each course?
Just 6 to 10 people, just small courses.
And walk around London and give them some assignments.
Just a typical street, colour matching or looking for people, unusual things or typical things you'd look for as a street photographer. And then I met someone, again through Nikon, from the Hope Foundation, which is a big charity in India.
I know of them, yeah.
And she said to us all, we used to have a photographer working for us, and they would charge a fee and they'd give half the fee to the Hope Foundation. She goes, would you be interested in doing that? And I spoke to Nikon and they said, yeah, we'll go for that. So that's how I started my travels into India, because the Hope Foundation are based in Kolkata, and that was the link. And so initially we used to use the same hotel and experiences that anyone else who's raising money for Hope did, and that went on for 3 years. And then Nikon decided that they didn't want to do this anymore because it wasn't the charity that they were working with. So they made a corporate decision that they didn't want to do that anymore. And Neil said to me at the time, he said, look, we've got these courses this year. He said, we're going to just knock them on the head. And I said, are you okay if I do them? And he says, yeah. He says, do you do them? He says, you can have access to the database and everything. He said, if you want, and just continue to promote them. He says, but it's all your bag now. He says, you do what you want.
So you did the whole thing.
So that's the point when I went by myself, if you like, started doing the travel photography courses by myself.
This is your music room, isn't it? This is you love Valve stuff, don't you? Because that doesn't even look like a record player. That looks like a work of art.
Yeah, it's a system that I built up really because of my dad's speakers.
Oh.
And my dad built those in the 70s, and when he passed, Mum said, do you want these speakers? And I had to get them repaired because the cone on one of the speakers was broken.
Yeah.
And I found this guy in Bracknell that makes handmade speakers, would you believe it?
Yeah, well, they're still around.
Yeah, and I took them to him, and he took them apart, and he said, your dad knew what he was doing. And he said, you might want this. And he'd opened the back up, and where people put the acoustic foam, etc., in speakers. And there were a couple of old Aran jumpers that we had as kids in the back there that he'd used because he couldn't afford all the materials. So when he passed, I sort of built a system up, if you like, in his honour. And he always wanted a Garrard record deck.
Right.
So I bought a Garrard record deck. And a bit like everything, when you open these doors and walk through them, a whole little world opens up to you, and you end up spending far too much money. And I ended up buying, a nice arm, a nice plinth, and then I got a valve system to go with it. And then I bought the valve system, and then I found out I needed another valve part to play the record through. Yeah. So it ended up costing me an arm and a leg, but it's our favourite room in the house. Yeah. I sit here often of an evening with my girlfriend, and there's no TV in here. We just sit and listen to music on predominantly albums.
And actually, that's a good link to Larry Towell. Every day's a school day. I feel I should know of Larry Towell. He's a Magnum photographer. And perhaps I've seen his work. And you know how it is sometimes. You see work and you don't necessarily know who's produced it. But Larry Towell, there's a connection between Larry's photography, which we'll talk about in a moment, and the fact that you've got albums of a photographer's. Because Larry's actually, well, when you played me a bit of his music, it felt like it was country blues.
Yep, I'd say that. I mean, Larry has been with Magnum many, many years, and I think he just sent his pictures in on the off chance one day. Right. And he's originally a poet that lives in Canada.
Oh, so he wasn't a photographer; he was a poet.
He was a poet.
Oh, right.
And he was, if you like, a journeyman photographer. He wasn't a professional photographer at all. And he sent his work into Magnum, and they invited him in. So that says a testament to the standard of his work. Larry's he's definitely old school. He likes analog stuff. You can see that from his book. And I mean, I've been lucky enough to meet him 2 or 3 times and spend time with the guy, which was absolutely amazing. But he's definitely an analog guy, and I kind of like things analog. I like old school. I'm over that age where I kind of remember growing up with these things, and it's nice that now in my stage of life I can sort of indulge myself a little bit in these things. But Larry Towell, he's probably my favourite photographer, I'd say, Neil.
And this book, The Mennonites. So I did ask you to pull out some books from your library that are inspirational to you, and you said this is probably his finest work. So I'll let you take the book out of the cover. It comes in a beautiful cover.
Beautiful slipcase.
A slipcase, yeah.
It's actually not a big book, and when I spoke to Larry, he said to me, he said, "What do you think is my best work?" Or because I think he's produced about a dozen or so books.
Right.
But without a doubt, The Mennonites is his best piece of work. And he spent years and years photographing this project. And the Mennonites are an Amish people.
It's described as a sect?
I guess so. Would you call the Amish a sect? It's a religion, I think. Yeah, it's a religion, but it's a way of life almost. And I don't think they're as strict as the Amish,
right?
But they have their own way of life, and they've got similar rules to the Amish. They go to church regularly. They let their children sort of go and explore life before they decide whether they want to stay within the community.
Right, okay.
A bit like the Amish do.
Yeah.
I think they call it, is it Rummagan or something like that? The Amish do, where they let their children at 17 go and explore for a year and decide whether they want to stay in the Amish community or whether they want to go out and because most of them stay because that's where they've been brought up all their life.
Like a kind of Amish gap year.
Oh yeah, that's a great analogy. But yeah, this book it's I don't know, it's not A4 but it's not A5. It's kind of in between.
It surprised me when I opened it that the first thing I opened to were these beautiful... He's a writer, isn't he? Definitely, you can see that. They're almost like...
it's like people in a Bible, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very thin paper. I thought, well, let's not touch this. It's his writing about these people printed on what feels like kind of a rice paper, almost.
Yeah, there's a lot of writing in here and there's a lot of detail in here. Yeah. I think one of the things that sets Larry apart as a documentary photographer, that he's spent years with this community. So, I photographed Amish people myself, and they're extremely shy and wary of anyone coming into their communities. Right. It's not something easy to do. But Larry's obviously got to know these people by, they live near his land, and I think he's employed some of these people on his land at some point. He owns a farm, Larry does. They trust him, so they've let him into their life, and because they trust him, he's got these great photographs and he's got the stories, and he's documented their stories and their plight about the land and how they're losing their land over the years. And it's a sort of book that there's three elements that you look at the pictures, you can read the story, and then Larry's got this other element to his life in that he's a musician. And as you said, he plays sort of country and blues type of music. He plays a banjo and he has a beatbox, and he's an eccentric guy without a doubt. He always wears the same shirt and the braces, and he's always got a straw cowboy hat on. He's definitely an eccentric guy. He's very principled, and he likes photographing projects about sort of land and movement of people. And this is what this is. And the other element, the third element I was talking about, is that he produces a CD.
Whenever he has a book, or?
Yeah, virtually every book.
And the music within it would be, obviously, his writings about the photographs he took.
Yeah.
Oh, what a talent.
And
are you not doing that yourself, Mark?
I'd love to, but, if you heard me sing, Neil...
Rumour has it you're quite good in the shower. What a talent, though. He did another book, didn't he, that was, or maybe this is an ongoing project as well. And we often talk on the podcast about you not having to go a long way to make photo stories. Yes, he lives on a farm, so it's probably quite interesting. But he's made a project from his front door, hasn't he, or something?
From my front porch.
From my front porch.
It's an absolutely fascinating book. It's, again, the way he's produced it, it's got a soft cover. Yeah. And again, it's a little bit bigger than this. It's almost A4. Paper is beautiful in it. Photographs are beautiful. And it's all about life around his property. And it's called From My Front Porch.
Right.
And... it's got everything in there. There might be just implements or things he's found on his land, that because his farm has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It might be the people that have worked on there. It might be the people that come to the door with deliveries. It's about the history of the place, because the farm has been in many generations. So there's documents he's photographed, and so it's just a whole story of his place and what goes on from his front door. And yes, it shows you, people say, I don't know what to photograph. There's a project there, and he's not left his front door effectively, or his land.
Right, some other inspirations of yours. I'll put Larry Towell down over there. Alain Lebois. Why this one? Why is this of particular resonance to you?
I love the way he's photographed his family, and I'd put this on a par with Sally Mann as well, with a family book.
It's called At the Edge of the World,
and this is his first book.
Right.
And I managed to collect it or get it, when he first started producing books. And it's just, not everyone can do this. The children, it's obviously a bit feral. They're living on a farm. He's just photographing them as they are. And the reason this book is so good is because it's true to life. You've got a great photographer photographing his family every day. And you can't pay someone to come in and do that. No one else can do it. Only you can do that yourself if you're a good documentary photographer, and Alain is an exceptional family photographer.
If I have a regret in terms of photographic regret, that is that I've not turned my cameras on my family. They've generally been there for taking a dollar and a cent, but they haven't been there really for family. My wife has done the predominant amount of the family photography. I've spent my time photographing other people's families, but I didn't do my own. And when you look through work like Alain's, you think, okay, I wouldn't have had the same backdrop as he's had, but look at the pictures you could achieve.
They're just amazing, aren't they? They're just, even if it's just like we're flicking through some pictures now, and it's just some pictures of some feet, or them playing together, running around, doing silly things,
cutting stuff out with cardboard boxes.
All our kids have done these, and we just take it for granted. After seeing this book, my son, they had a little kid. Ronnie, his name is, named after my dad, actually.
Oh, lovely.
And Ronnie's now 2.5, and they used to live a couple of miles from me, but they've moved nearer his wife's family now up in Hull, so it's a little bit too far for me to go. But I used to go round there once a week and photograph Ronnie. And it would be around bath time, or we'd go out somewhere, and I just thought I can get a really good body of work over, and I'd done, I don't know, a couple of dozen shoots with them, and I got maybe 1 or 2 good pictures each time. But alas, the project has fallen now because Ronnie's grown up and Ronnie's moved away.
Such a lovely idea. There we go. So that's Alain. Who have we got next? This is interesting. There's nothing on the cover. A Greek portfolio.
By Kostas Manos, another Magnum photographer.
You do like a Magnum photographer, don't you?
Yeah, I guess I do.
There's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
At all. And I love it. Again, I guess it's going back to that. If you look at the 3 books that I've chosen and shown you, without realising it, they're all taken on film. They're all analogue, and they're all moments. They're all in black and white.
There's no colour.
No, none at all. And if you look at this book of Kostas, you can see it's old because the pages are yellowing on the corners. But I just love this style of photography. He's just documenting his homeland where he is. There's someone taking confession there. Yeah, it's all done on a Greek island. It's called a Greek portfolio. Yeah, just another beautiful book of images, almost just 1 image per page, beautiful black and white cameras. I bet this was all taken on a Leica, probably, knowing Magnum photographers and the age it was taken.
There's a photographer that I've got to know quite well now, Marissa Roth, who has photographed for the LA Times, and she's travelled the world making some incredibly potent stories. And she uses a phrase which I've now purloined called sketchbooking, sketchbook photo. And as I look through this book by Manos, I'm thinking there's a collection of very well made sketchbook pictures, but the camera is his sketchbook.
Yep, I totally agree with that. And it's they look like simple photographs, but they're very, very well composed photographs. And they're storytelling. Each one is storytelling. And we just happen to flick to this picture here, and it's someone in a confession. And how often would you get to photograph that? But I guess he's doing it where he lives, and they're comfortable with him. They trust him, and I think that's a big thing. If we look at the last two books that we've spoken about, by Elaine and by Larry, they've both got these photographs through being around people that they've earned their trust, and that they let them go wherever they want to photograph the story. They've not just gone there and done it over a day or two. These things have happened over years and years.
Jim Richardson I spoke to on the programme recently, and he talked about that as well. In terms of making some of the pictures he made for the high school project, initially he didn't go in with a camera. Initially he sat with them. Initially he just moved around the corridors. And then eventually, what did he say? You need to embrace your inner boredom. You need to be a bit boring, he says, for people to forget that you're there.
I totally agree with you. And I think even if you're on the street, just being there and staying somewhere a long time, and the longer you're there, the better your photographs will be, because you'll blend into the background and you become part of the scene. In fact, I run a lot of courses around the world, and I think that's the biggest takeaway or biggest difference you see between professional and amateur photographers, is that most photographers, amateur photographers, they take a picture, they look at the back and think, I've got it, and then they move on, and then they might spend the next half an hour just wandering around looking for the next scene, and yet you don't know if that scene that you will photograph in has actually heightened or not yet, because you've gone. It's still there, it's still happening. So always stay with the scene, and as long as you can, until the scene finishes.
Do you still shoot in black and white? I know you're a digital shooter. You have been for your professional career for a long, long time now. Are you still intrigued to go out and shoot with a roll of HP5 or Tri-X? I mean, we're looking at some beautiful gritty, grainy, contrasty pictures here that just sort of, they draw you right into the picture.
I do and I don't. I guess I'm lazy in that way, Neil, really. I hanker after a Leica and I think go and buy an M6 and in fact, a couple of years ago I went and bought a Rolleiflex and I went and bought a Hasselblad and I play around with them. The whole process is so involved these days, and it's expensive. You've got to buy a roll of film, you've got to process it, you then got to scan it unless you've got a dark room, and it's a long process. And you've got 12 shots on a roll of medium format, and I could take 12 pictures in under a second on the Sony I use. So I'd love to, and I've thought about it many times. I've gone halfway down the route. I've gone and bought the gear. I've even got some scanning stuff upstairs, and I've never got around to it. I've got a fridge full of film in there. Oh yeah, I've got loads of. I've probably got 30 or 40 rolls of film in the fridge still.
What's your roll of choice that's sat next to the tomatoes at the moment?
Well, there's a lot of Porter in there actually. Porter 400, 800, but my favourite is got to be Tri-X.
Why?
Just the grain structure. It just it looks gritty. It looks like how I think a black and white picture should look. And if you look at my pictures, they're quite contrasty. In fact, I remember when I had an exhibition, the gallery owner. This is when I had the gallery for my father's work in Andepa in Mayfair. And he said to me, if Caravaggio had a camera. And I said, that's some compliment. And he said, the blacks in your picture. He said, and if ever you go and see a Caravaggio work of art, you'll see that contrast in the pictures. Obviously, he's painting in colour, but I think it's a bit of a compliment too far, I think.
There's one final book here from the books that I asked you to show me. So I know you've got a huge library of books, but the few that you've picked out to show me that have been certainly inspirations to you. This one, Kolkata, is a place that you know very well.
Yes, it's one of my favourite places to take street photography. I always refer it to street photography on steroids. It's just an amazing place as a street photographer to go to. it's not, you don't find many, it's not a touristy place. So you can pretty much go around and they're pleased to see you and you can document what you like. But I've been there 11 times now.
You know it reasonably well then?
I know the places to go to. I know the best locations. I know the best times to go there. But even so, I still keep going back to those same locations because things change, light changes, people change. And this is one of my favourite photographers. And, Raghu Ray is based around Kolkata. I've never had the chance of meeting him yet. I would love to some point. But his images of Kolkata and his books, he's got a couple on Kolkata, are absolutely exceptional.
Let's have a little scoot through the book.
It's a big book.
Yeah.
I think they're almost like 1510s or 20 by 16s almost, aren't they? But again,
There's a warm tone being used here, isn't there?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And, some nice words at the beginning telling you about India at the time. And he's taken these pictures over a long time. And it's really interesting because I know these places. I mean, I know where this is. This is down by the flower market in one of the Ghats. And I've gone down there. He's probably quite pleased because you can't take this photograph now. There's a tree growing here, over here. So you can't get this. To get this image, and we're looking at an image where there's 5 or 6 people in the image. There's a guy lying down, probably sleeping, and there's a guy doing acrobats, and it's just capturing that, if you like, that decisive moment that's coined by Bresson. So there's lovely images all the way through this, Neil.
Again, we're looking at a sort of a sketchbooking, beautifully done, granted, because in and of themselves, some of the pictures aren't necessarily groundbreaking, but as you look through, you start to get a real feel of this city and the vibrancy, don't you?
You do indeed, and I think it's something that I've been told many times about my images. You don't need every image to be great. I mean, we probably don't take that many great images throughout our career, but you need other images to hold the book together, to tell the story. There's probably half a dozen what I'd call like great images in here, but there's a lot of images in here that they're not award-winning, but they actually hold the book together and they tell the story. Yeah. And I think that's the big difference between a street photographer and a documentary photographer. You're there for the long haul. You're telling a story about the place or a particular subject or a particular person over a period of time.
Hold up along that path just for a moment. Let us compare walking boots or shoes, shall we? Feet in the air. Hold that Pilates position. Steady, steady. Yeah, I'm very happy to wear loafer on my feet. Boots in the winter, shoes in the summer. And shoes too for my walks in India. And until the end of April, this one's for our walking friends in the UK. If your feet are saying, "Excuse me, could we, like Neil's feet, have some loafers known for their comfort and support with minimal seams, designed for life outdoors, suitable for all terrains?" Well, you can. You can take advantage of a special 25% off by going to lover.co.uk, spelt LOWA.co.uk, and use the word Photowalk at checkout. And if you're sending in your walking adventures for Take a Hike on the Wild Side, you'll be automatically entered into a draw to win whatever you choose, boots or shoes. Due to shipping, this time is for our UK walkers. Send those stories and pictures of your hikes with a camera to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Right. Feet back down on the ground. I'm amazed you held them up so long.
You've just reminded me that it's about 12 years since I set up my filming equipment in this room that we're in. This is where you do your editing. This is Editing Central. I can't believe it's 12 or so years since I was recording the film about the photo project you were making at the time about your dad and his battle with dementia. Why did you choose to make this? I'm going to look through some photos with you here and describe what we're seeing, and I'll put some on the show page as well and do some links so that you can follow the story as well. But why did you choose to make a story about what was a very difficult time for you as a family?
I didn't actually decide to do a project, Neil. It just kind of evolved. And I've been a photographer all my life, as you know, and Mum and Dad have always seen me with a camera. And when Dad was diagnosed with dementia, I just said to him, I'm going to photograph you most days now, Dad. And he just joked, yeah, okay. And it was left like that. And I did photograph. I mean, I go and visit Mum and Dad probably once or twice a week. They live pretty local to me. Yeah. So I would always have my camera with me anyway, but I just made more of a concerted effort to focus it on Dad and their house and, where he was living and some of the struggles my mum was going through.
Do you think it helped you as well? Was there a catharsis around this? Otherwise, you were visiting Mum and Dad, probably later on not necessarily able to have that much conversations with Dad.
Absolutely. In fact, it was almost a prop later stages, because when Dad went into a home, I used to take Mum go and see him probably 3-4 times per week, and there's not a lot I can do in there. I was just sitting in there, basically letting Mum sit next to him, and they were holding hands, and Mum was talking to him. And I was kind of like the spare part there. It was their conversation, and it's Mum and Dad, and she wanted to be with Dad. And so for me to have my camera gave me, if you like, something to do. So I was watching what was going on, and there would be moments where things would happen, and I'd get out and document that part of the day. And that's the reason I did it. I didn't do it for any other reason at all. It was just about taking pictures of my family.
Mum never really accepted the process, did she? I remember filming one particular moment where she said, I just want my Ronnie back. And I think she believed that there was a possibility that one day she'd wake up and the pills had worked.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, she still misses my dad. It's over 10 years now. Yeah. And, it's a shame. I mean, they had a beautiful relationship. They were definitely soulmates. And, Mum misses Dad every day. I mean, his ashes are in her bedroom, and, there's photographs of my dad around the house. And she still talks very fondly about him every time I go there, which is lovely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's look through some of the photographs. The first one is of your dad, Ronnie, outside the family home. They lived in this home all their life, didn't they?
Not only all their life. I mean, my dad was born at number 13 Meadway, and so he was born in 1932. And I know his parents bought that house. It's a bungalow for £500 at the time. Mm. And when Mum and Dad got married, and I think it was 1958, they bought number 3 Meadway. So, just a few houses away, really, 6 or 7 houses away. And my mum lived in that house until literally 6 or 9 months ago. So that's the only place they've ever lived their whole lives.
Is there any significance? Is there any meaning behind this picture? It's a portrait of Dad, and he's doing this sort of strongman pose. He's flexing his arms and his muscles, isn't he? And looking straight into your camera in front of the house.
I think it's Dad. I mean, right. He was quite a character.
He's a joker.
And absolute joker. Always telling, stories and, making little jokes. And, he was a bit of a wordsmith. And I said, can I take your picture, Dad? And he just said, yeah. And I said, no, let's go outside the front of the house. I said, because, the house is quite significant. Mm. And I just sort of put him in the middle of the house. And I said, give me a smile, and he just did the pose himself. I didn't say do a strongman pose. He just did that naturally. So it makes it even better, because if I said do this and do that, I don't think it would have worked as well.
Mm. The next picture on from this is quite significant. The Ace Cafe London means something to them, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This is where they used to go dating. And you'll see in probably a couple of pictures' time, I mean, Dad was a motorbike enthusiast. Yeah. He had a bike, a Vincent Black Shadow, which even today is a highly sought after bike. It was. I guess when he met Mum, it was like meeting a guy with a Ferrari these days. It was really sort of the bee's knees, and. They used to go to the Ace Cafe quite a lot because it was a place where, cafe racers used to meet. And, Dad raced his bike at points in his life. And, this is where they used to meet and hang out.
Was he like, I always think of my dad in this respect. Was he the sort of useful dad with a mechanic's wrench? He could fix his own bike, change the sump on the car and...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean... you saw Dad's garage, and it had nuts and bolts, and everywhere of every different sort of sort that you can imagine. So, and quite often, in the early days, I don't really remember it myself, but the bike would be in bits in one of the rooms.
What, in the house?
Absolutely. One of the bedrooms was dedicated to this bike. Even though I had a brother, we always shared a bedroom because
the bike was in the other one.
Absolutely, yeah. But the bike was sold quite early on. It was sold when I was about sort of 12 years old, and he sold it because he felt it was dangerous. It was incredibly fast, this bike. And he had a family, and they needed the money to improve the house. So the bike went, unfortunately.
Now, there were a lot of very intimate pictures in this story. The next one is of Dad asleep. In fact, there he is holding in his left hand. He's fallen asleep in his chair, and he's holding in his left hand a framed picture of probably that bike, actually, with both of you. Look,
it is.
Look at you, both of you sitting on the bike. What are you there? You're aged about what? I don't know, 6, 7?
Yeah, probably, I'll be maybe 6, and Colin will be a couple of years younger, but we're sitting on the bike. But the reason we used to give him that picture, because anyone who has someone suffering with dementia knows they have a really good long-term memory. There's certain things that they can recall, and even to the point just weeks before Dad passed away, he could virtually name every part on that bike still, but he couldn't remember my name. But on that bike, he knew every part.
When you were photographing him in those stages, was that must have been pretty hard in that respect, that he didn't know who you were, and you were there with a camera? Or were there fleeting moments where, he recognised what you were doing?
Yeah, there were fleeting moments where he would know who I was, or he would say something that he recalled that happened many, many years ago. But it was difficult. But it was, as I said, this was a prop. So I was going there more than I'd had my whole life. I mean, normally I'd go and see Mum and Dad once a week, but once dementia kicked in, and I was going there sort of 2, 3 times, 3, 4 times per week.
Was the camera? We talked about this recently, actually, using the word bridge. Was the camera a bridge during this period, do you think?
Absolutely, Neil. It did give me an excuse to be there, because I wanted to, photograph Dad in every way I could, and if I went round there just for a coffee, even if it was just for like 15-20 minutes, I'd take the camera, maybe get one shot. There were many times when I never got anything because he would just be asleep, or there would be nothing interesting happen. But when he's holding an image of myself, my brother on his bike, and talking about the components on the bike, it's kind of an image that I know is strong, and it's storytelling.
Detail is very important in storytelling. And the next image here is a very simple image, but a very important image. It's a glass plate of his daily pills, I would imagine, with the water next to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as a storyteller, as a documentary storyteller, you need these simple images to hold the whole series together. And as you said, this is a really simple image. There's another one that I took of just his shaver.
Oh yes,
on the side.
That, yeah.
And it's the last picture. He was at the house. Dad was leaving the house, and he had a shave before he went, and he's left the shaver on the shelf in the bathroom. And so when I come back, there's just a picture of his shaver, and I took that because it's a memory.
I know this project really well now. There's a couple of pictures on here where he looks just confused. He was struggling, I know, he wanted to do the normal things of life, but I think this is when he was looking at the bills or something. This particular one, he's at the the family's table.
This is in the dining room.
That's it.
So at the table, and he's got the bills there, and he would just look over the bills over and over and over and again, trying to understand them. And in fact, Mum said at one point to myself and my brother, will you look after all these, because it's just so much grief having all these around. So Colin and I took over this part of Mum's life. But the reason I love this image is because he's got his hand on his head. If he was just looking at the bills, it wouldn't be a good image. But it shows the table, it shows the if you like, the period of what they were living in, the wallpaper, the type of tablecloth, the knives and forks, and then it's even got a sort of picture of their grandson in the background on the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a lovely storytelling picture of someone struggling to remember.
There were, if we go on to that image of Mum in the is it the hospital or the care home? And now I went with you only once to the care home, and but this is a particularly particularly emotional moment for Mum. Explain why this day was important and what's going on here. She's wiping a tear with a tissue from her eye.
So this was a difficult picture for me to take. Dad, we'd taken Dad into the home. He thought he was just going to visit, but we had to say goodbye to him and leave him in the home. And this is Mum coming out, so she's just left Dad. And the reason it's so significant is because she said to me afterwards, she goes, "Tonight will be the first night I ever sleep by myself."
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Sorry, I need to take a gasp. Because growing up, she was from a family of 8, and she said she shared a bed all her life with her sister.
Huh.
And then the next day she got married, and then she shared a bed with Ronnie her whole life. Yeah. And they were never apart. And this was going to be the first night. I mean, she came back to my house and she stayed at my house for a couple of days. But that's the significance in this picture. And it was a hard picture to take.
How did you deal with moments like this, Mark? I mean, you're used to making photographs of people in very emotional moments. It's something you've done in weddings. You photographed a funeral. You're a professional photographer. But this is far removed from anything you expect to make professionally.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think it's one of the reasons that it's such a strong set of pictures is because someone close to someone has taken these pictures. But yeah, I mean, I think akinning it to emotions that happened at a wedding, and I can recall a couple of weddings where almost a tear come to my eye because you get caught up in the emotion. And the same here, there was a tear in my eye as I was taking this, and I was just saying to myself, just take the picture, just take the picture, just take the picture. And I was crying at this point. But I knew it was an important part. I knew it's an important image to take, just like the one prior to that, a picture of Dad leaving the house. I knew it was, so I went outside and I positioned myself to capture him walking out of the back door for the last time, because I knew it was going to be a key moment.
Yeah. What's the last picture in the portfolio here, Mark? Ah, yes. So this is very advanced now, isn't it?
So the last picture, again, this was quite a difficult picture to take. Yeah. And I stood on a chair to take this so I could get the whole scene in, if you like. And Mum is feeding Dad, and Dad wants to eat, but he can't get this sandwich in Mum's hand, and she's holding it for him, and he wants to eat it, and you can just see that it's a tough time. In fact, this picture was taken literally a week before he passed away, so it's the last image I ever took of Dad. I saw him the following few days, but I put the camera down.
Having made this project, you're obviously very, very proud of this, and there's many people that have said how important this project has been to them.
It still amazes me, like 10 years later, I still get people ringing me up or sending me emails once a month just saying, can we use the pictures for our thesis? But I've had many, many people call me and talk about it, and they go from people that are going through a similar situation themselves and just saying thank you for sharing them with us. It goes through the exhibition we had and the money we raised for the Alzheimer's Awareness Month, to one of the biggest accolades that I received was one of the directors from Magnum phoned me and just said, I can't help you, but I just wanted to call you. He said, because these are the best pictures I've ever seen of this subject. And he said, this needs to be in an exhibition somewhere. And thank you, Nicholas Andeepa, who stepped forward. Andeepa, the oldest art gallery in London, offered to put this on, and they gave me a whole floor for a month for this exhibition.
Incredible. Would you say this is your most important piece of work from your photographic career?
Oh, without a doubt. And it's strange because it come about through love. It didn't come about by me saying, I'm going to do this project. It wasn't something that I set out to do any of this stuff. It was just photographing my dad. And even today, there's things happening. Yeah, definitely, without a doubt, it's the best piece of work. And I'm not sure I can better this. But hey,
What advice do you give to photographers when they say, how do you go about this, Mark? What should I do? I want to do something. I know it's not always going to be dementia, clearly. It can be for all sorts of reasons. So, some of them, of course, far, far happier. But what's your advice to photographers who want to make something as personal as this?
That's a great question, Neil. And I'm going to refer to a book we were looking at earlier by Costas Manos. And I met Costas Manos on a portfolio review. And he said to me, the best thing, because I said to him, I struggle with projects and I don't know what to photograph, and I'm always looking for things and for ideas. And he said, it's simple, just photograph your family. He said, everyone can photograph their family. Everyone has got a project there. And, nothing could be truer. If you've got children or you've got grandchildren, if you've got elderly parents or grandparents, just photograph them on a regular basis. And over a period, you'll get closer to them. And you'll have a project of work that, not only that you'll love, but your family will cherish, because it shows your family over a period of time.
And we return to Mark Seymour very soon. A few weeks out of reading your mails, the letters that you send in to the mailbag, but we will be returning to that soon. So please keep sending in stories of your adventures with a camera to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. There's a contact page, actually. I haven't mentioned this for a while. On the show page, photowalk.show, there's a contact page with some ideas. If you've been thinking, I'd like to write into the show, but I'm not quite sure what to say or what to write, then there's a few ideas actually on the contact page. So go to photowalk.show, go to the contact page, and from there you might think, yes, I'll write in about that. Right, the one-word assignment. Here comes your challenge for this month. I'll tell you how you can take part in a moment. Claire Thomas has the challenge.
The Photowalk assignment.
A one-word assignment, Claire. What's that word going to be?
So my one-word assignment is going to be humanity.
Oh, I like it. And that's very fitting for you.
Exactly. That's what a lot of my work is all about.
I would imagine some people will look at your work and say, well, that's okay for you, Claire Thomas. You can show humanity in some of the places that you'd least expect to find it. And it's a bit like when we say, well, the world's a lot more interesting if you get on a jetliner and find it. Whilst it can be on your doorstep, can't it? Humanity can be. Do you have any examples of perhaps what humanity means or what it can mean?
A nice moment of interaction with family members, or with an animal, or it could even be a self-portrait of something that you feel shows your humanity, self-reflection.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm always drawn to is hands. And I feel like hands tell an extraordinary story of humanity. You can tell a lot about a person and what they've lived through by their hands. But it can be anything. Take it in any direction.
Best of luck. Send your pictures to stories@photowalk.show If you can, resize them to 2,500 pixels wide. Otherwise, don't worry, send it full res and I'll do the heavy lifting. No watermarks, no borders, but do include links to your social feeds, your website, your Flickr, Glass, whatever you have, so we can enjoy more of your work. Also, send me some thoughts about the picture too, if you think that helps with the storytelling. All the pictures and stories will go onto the assignments page, so make sure it's original work. And some of the pictures will also feature on our Photowalk Instagram, which helps get more eyes on your work and helps our community to grow. I'll be sure, of course, to tag straight back to your profile. Right, shall we return to Mark? Let's. I'm looking at your business card, and on the back are all the places you travel to or you photograph in.
Yeah. There's a few more, but there's the main ones.
Allahabad, Bihar, Lisbon, Kolkata, Istanbul, Jodhpur, Majuli Island. Where's that?
Majuli Island is an island in India.
I guessed it was an island. I had that bit.
That gives the name.
The clue was in the name. Yeah.
It's in the. Forgive me for the pronunciations. I think it's the Brahmaputra River in India. So, in fact, I'm going there again in March this year.
Are you leading an expedition?
No, I did last time, and I loved it so much there. I'm going back again with 3 friends.
Oh, nice.
So it's quite a trek. You fly into Guwahati, which is north of Kolkata, and then from there we'll take a 3-day jeep ride to Zero. And Zero is where the Apatani tribes are.
Oh, Zero's on your list here. Yeah, that's where those... that's a fascinating tribe to photograph, isn't it?
The Apatani tribe, they're the women with the nose plugs and the facial tattoos.
Yes.
That are there done by their own tribes to believe it or not, make the women unattractive to other tribes.
Oh, is that why?
That's why it's done, yes.
Okay.
And then from there, it's a day drive to Majuli Island. And Majuli Island is the largest island in a river in the world. But it's disappearing. They reckon in 25 years it may not be there. But there's this tribe there called the Missing Tribe. And they lead a very peaceful life. They do tapestries, they do weaving, make cotton, and it's just a very peaceful and tranquil place to visit, and it's wonderful.
What is it about India? Because many of these places on the back here are India. Jodhpur's there.
Jodhpur's another favourite place. Although I haven't been there for 6 or 7 years. Jodhpur. It's quite small, Jodhpur, I feel. It's probably 2 or 3 day visit. I love India. I think the people there are very friendly. It's obviously, you can photograph both on the street there, or you can go and photograph tribes there. It's got that mix there. I'm really getting into sort of photographing tribes. There's another place on there that we visited recently called Nagaland.
Nagaland, yes.
And I've been there 3 times to Nagaland, and they were the last headhunters in the world, and we spent the best part of a week with them, sleeping in their tents, and because there's no hotels up there. I mean, there's no Hilton hotel or no motorway. The very fact that they're tribal, they're outside the city centre, so they're normally a drive away, and you can't just rock up and see these people.
The last headhunters.
Yes.
Right. Well, you've come back with yours, so you're okay. You obviously got on well with them.
Do you know, they're just another group of people, and when they headhunted, it was intertribal, so it would be rival gangs, if you like, or rival tribes, and they've not done it since I think the 1970s was the last time they did it.
That's not that long ago.
No, it's not.
No.
And when you say to people that we spent a couple of weeks with these tribes, and when you're there and you start talking about it afterwards, it's a little bit surreal. We went to. You're sitting in their huts, and they're smoking opium in there, and there's big knives around, and there's guns around, but you don't feel under threat there because it's their way of life. In fact, the other thing that when I recall, we went to visit their school, and we went into the classroom because they wanted to show us these, and every child had a machete on his desk.
Wow.
And when you say it, you think, wow, that sounds dangerous. But at break time, they all come out and they were like playing pretend sword fights with them, and they were just playing with them. You didn't feel in danger at all, and they didn't see it as a weapon. It was just a tool that they, as a nagger, you would use every day.
I remember actually my first visit to West Africa, to the Gambia, where the Kankaran festival was on, and everybody dresses up. I can explain it, I suppose, as sort of straw costumes, and they would have machetes which they'd bang together, and they'd approach you in the street, or they'd stop your car if you were driving in the bush, and it would be because you need to cross their machetes with a note, a delassie.
Wow.
Yeah. But if you didn't know that, it might be a bit disconcerting.
Yeah. And I think it's because of where we are, and things like knife crime, etc. We go, wow, that's going to be dangerous. But to them, it's everyday life, and you're going in there, and they're lovely people. I mean, we sat there, they cooked for us, we drank coffee with them, we got a little bit drunk on rice wine. They keep pouring rice wine down here. It's rice wine or rice beer out of a tin cup, and I've got and it was poured out of like a 5-gallon orange container. Repurposed, but
which was also used to fuel the tractor.
Probably, yeah. Who knows? But you kind of with them, and the same will happen this year. We'll go to the Mioko festival, which is where the Apatani is their tribal sort of festival once a year in April or March, and there'll be some sacrificial stuff happening with animals there. But it's their life, then they use those animals to feed the village. But it's truly fascinating, you to actually be able to immerse yourself in that life and be accepted in there. But the reason I am accepted is because I've got a really good fixer, who speaks the language and, who paves the way for us. So we're expected there. And then once we're there, last year when we went there, one of the days, even though we're on a photography tour, I think we spent most of the day just in one person's house, about 8 of us.
Fantastic.
And we just sat around the fire, in the lounge, there's a big open fire. And we just sat there and just talked.
And drank rice wine.
It was rice wine, then the next because rice beer, but it all tasted the same.
Is your focus affected by the rice wine? I would imagine it probably is.
They were, they were. I was doing intentional camera movement pictures, ICM, I think they call it.
Photography gifts so much. I've found in my life, I wish I'd have done it earlier professionally, but I've found that it's been a real key to unlock the door to meet some fascinating people in my life that I would never have probably felt comfortable to approach in the past and say, oh, you look pretty cool, or I like your hat, or that's in street photography terms. And also through weddings, actually, the confidence to just go and talk to somebody, which you might not do if you didn't have a camera around your neck. So it's that gift. But the other gift I'm thinking about is the gift that I'm finding now, which is travel. I've travelled, Mark, but I haven't travelled. My kids have grown up going to the Greek islands, Tenerife, Gran Canaria, Orlando, Australia. Very lucky to have toured a bit of Australia. But now my appetite is, I think it's slightly more developed, and I want to see the world, not just the places that you'd find in a TUI brochure.
I totally agree with you. And, when you talk to many people and they say, I've travelled a lot, and you say, where have you been? And they say, I've been to Barcelona, or I've been to Paris, or I've been to, Dublin. And it's like, where have you travelled to? They're European destinations, and lovely as they are. And I've been to those places as well. But, when you get to travel off the beaten track to places that most people don't get to go to, it's a real privilege. You're actually going into these people's lives. They're letting you in there. And as long as, they're most people in this world are normal, and they want a happy life, and they're happy to sit down with you and tell you their story if you tell them your story. And I just think, I think like we were talking earlier, I'll never be a millionaire, but I've had a lovely life. It's a really rich life. And I've travelled to places and met people that I could never have dreamt of if I'd done a 9-to-5 day job. And so from that point of view, I'm blessed. I'm really, lucky to have been a photographer and have access to these people and places that I probably would never have done.
Minus a camera. That's been the conduit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the camera is like, if you like, this mask. It allows you to do things. You can go anywhere with your camera. When you think about a wedding, you can go up and talk to anyone at that wedding, anyone, with your camera. But if you were there just as a guest, probably you couldn't.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
might be able to go and say hi, but that camera gives you access. And the same, whatever you're photographing. And like you, I've photographed some very important people. And I can remember an event at Clifton, and there was this guy there standing in the corner, and I just started chatting to him, and someone came up to me and said, "Oh, do you realise who he is?" And I said, "No." He said, "Oh, he's an ambassador from Russia." And I said, "Oh," he said, "I'm surprised he spoke to you." And I said, "Well, I just talk to anyone." and we were just chatting, having a conversation.
Yeah.
And he said, "Do you want to try some caviar?" And we were having a glass of champagne between us. And it was just like, it was just normal.
Yeah.
But if I'd been a guest at Clifton or a guest somewhere
never
else,
have gone over.
I would never have gone over there, because I would have thought, he's that person, I better not approach him. But the camera is almost like a great leveller, if you like.
Yeah. There is a book coming out, a Seymour book.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it? Is it tempting?
No, I can talk to you about it because it's going to happen.
Yes.
It's something I've always wanted to do, and I think most photographers, we dream of putting a book together.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But sometimes the cost outweighs it, or just the logistics of doing a book is manyfold. But this year I've been entering a couple of competitions, and I was really fortunate to win a prize from Snap, the publishers.
Yeah.
Of having a book published. And I actually spoke to the publishers just a few days ago to just go over what the prize was and what they would be doing. And I was really pleasantly surprised, Neil, because basically they're going to produce the first 35 free of charge. They will try and sell another 25 to 50 via a crowdfunding campaign. They run the campaign. They do all the social media. That's all part of the prize. The book is going to be A4 prints, so with a hardbound book cover. So it's slightly bigger than A4. 200 gram paper, photographic paper. So good quality paper. Minimum of 128 images in the book. So, a substantial book. And I've already started prepping the images. It's going to be on India, not just Kolkata. It's going to be on India. And I think we're going to call the book Images Through the Lens of Mark Seymour. Mm-hmm. I've spoken to a good friend of mine, John Swanell. He's going to do the foreword for me. Another good friend, Kevin Wilson, is going to be helping me sort of, narrow the images down so we got the right images, because a big part of making a book is if you like, just laying it out so it looks good. Sequencing, I think they call it. Really, really excited. I have no time scales on it yet, but I guess, watch the Instagram page, because it will be mentioned on there, and as soon as we know, we'll let you know.
Now, you have had the fortune over the last couple of years to have spent some time with two photographers in particular that I've spoken with on the show, Ed Cashy from the Seven Agency and Ilvi Nirkitian. And one of the things I think that was said to you, and perhaps it was said as well by the other photographer that you particularly like, Larry, yes, that you need to support your work with words. Yes.
So I enrolled on a course in Arles in France with Ilvi and Ed Karshi. And it was a 3-day course. And we had to show them a portfolio of work or two bodies of work. So I showed them my work from Cuba and also the work I'd done on dementia. And both of them picked on the dementia work particularly. They didn't really sort of say a lot about the Cuba work. They just said, like, the images are good, but there's no story there. There's no words there. It's street photography. They're just individual images throughout various places in Cuba. It's not like it's just about cigar making, or it's not about poverty, or it's not about Cuban dancing. It needs to be about a subject, whereas yours is quite random in its approach. There's nothing wrong with the photography and the framing and all that sort of thing, but you need some words with it and concentrate on one particular project. With the dementia, you have that, but the thing that lets it down is there's no words. So I can fix that, because obviously it was my father, so I can put words to it, which on my website now I've done that. So every image I've put probably 20 or 30 words on about the image, and I've done a bit of documentary sort of text on it, which is now on my website. But one of the things was really nice at the end of the meeting, or the end of the course. Ed Karshi approached me and just said, the dementia project is really strong, and said we have a project within the 7 agency called 1 in 6, which is where they believe 1 in 6 people over the age of 60 will still be working by the year 2030. And they may be working because they have to, or they may be working because they want to. And if you looked at someone like myself, I'll still be working because I love my job and I see it as a lifestyle rather than work. Whereas, you may be working in a store packing shelves, or you may be working in an office, and you need to, maybe because of the cost of living crisis, or you need to still pay your mortgage or your rent or that sort of thing. So they said, if you can find someone to photograph like that, we'd love to have that as a project for the UK. We're choosing a couple of photographers for each country in the world. So they said, you just need to go and find someone. So, which is easier said than done. But I managed to bump into this guy at a wedding I photographed. And bear in mind, I only photographed 5 weddings last year. But I bumped into this guy called Roy Hoadley, who was pinning up some bunting at the wedding. And I approached Roy, and we arranged to meet and chat later. But Roy turns out that he's a kite maker.
Yeah. And
I could see he was a character straight away. He had long silver hair, a bit like Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac, and he had jewellery like one of the guys from the Rolling Stones, Ronnie Wood, and he had a cowboy hat on that was made of felt and turquoise felt, and he had an orange leather jacket on, and he was quite rock and roll, and yet you could see quite clearly he was in his 70s. Anyway, we got chatting, and I told him about this project. And he agreed to that I could photograph him. So I spoke to him a few weeks later on the phone, and he invited me up to a festival that he runs. And he's a kite maker, it turns out. His words when I met him were, every village has a kite maker. Yeah. And of course they do. But
do they?
I went to see Roy's little shop, which was like a treasure trove inside. There was all kites in there, and sewing machines, and there's only 2 people in there. It was Roy and his partner. And I photographed them. He invited me to a kite fair that he runs. I spent 3 days with him photographing him. Photographing some of these kites, and believe me, some of these kites were enormous. I mean, one of them had to be tied to a 4x4 to it was that powerful when it was up in the sky. And then I interviewed him because, this is what I'd learned from this course. And I said, to Roy, so tell me, Roy, how do you make your living, and what's the big career moments that you've had, making kites? Because, to an outsider, you'd think, well, it's just things kids play with. Yeah. And when he started to talk to me, it was just unbelievable. I mean, this guy has been making kites since he was 25 years old. And he's had a whole career and a very substantial career making kites. And I said, what's the couple of 2 or 3 biggest jobs you've ever done? And he said, well, he said, I supply all the kites and the flags and all that for Glastonbury every year.
No way.
And it's like, all of a sudden you think wow, that's big. And I said, anything else? He said, I've just made a kite for the Lord Mayor's show for London. He said, it's like a 150-foot tall kite, a replica of the Big Ben. He said, the other thing I do, he said, I do all Coldplay's events.
What?
And he said, the other year, he said, they got to play the half-time gig at the Super Bowl. And he said, I provided all the flags or the kites and all that for Coldplay. He said, and so ever since then I've done all their gigs. All of a sudden it's like, wow, there's this guy here working every day still because he absolutely loves doing it. He gets up, he gets into his workshop at 10 o'clock in the morning. He said he works till 4 o'clock every day, then he goes and has 2 pints of beer, then he goes home, and that's his day. And I said, when do you think you'll stop? He said, never. He said, because I love doing what I'm doing. And he said, why wouldn't you? He said, I said, I get flown to the Super Bowl to see my stuff. It's been a privilege. It's actually just gone live on their site. But I provided 7 for this 1 in 6 project. I had to provide them with up to 20 images, and they picked 15 of them. And then a story about Roy Hoadley.
Oh, that's lovely, that one as well. This might seem like after you, Mark, this might seem like a strange place to end. I don't think I've ever ended an interview walking up somebody's stairs. But you've got your collection of, they're all black and white, your black and white photographs from various, I recognise this one. Who's that? That's Elliot Erwitt, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah.
Oh, it's an Elliot Erwitt print. There's a John Swannell. Bit cheeky, John, that one. Who's this? This is your gallery.
Yeah, Herman Leonard is a jazz photographer.
That's a beautiful picture.
And they're all done on 5x4 cameras.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is my favourite Herman Leonard print. As you can see, who's in the
Ella
photograph.
Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, and Benny Goodman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
good. In one shot.
Yeah. But
in one frame.
It's a sort of photograph that you would like to take, and I'd like to take. The layers in it, the moment.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pick out a couple of pictures, if you don't mind. I know this one down here is one of yours, actually. So these, there's so many. Oh, there's a John Swannell, one of Duran Duran there. Oh, that's a very familiar picture.
It's John Swannell.
Yeah. Oh, look at that, of the Stones. But this is one of yours.
Yep.
And this is Jimmy Choo.
Yes, Jimmy Choo. So
I've seen many of Jimmy Choo's shoes at weddings that I've photographed.
And probably never a picture of Jimmy Choo himself.
No, I didn't know what Jimmy Choo looked like, actually.
And not many people do. He's quite a shy guy, actually. Yeah. And he was at a wedding that I photographed. And
it's amazing, by the way, how many of the stories that you've told today actually have roots back in a wedding.
Isn't it? When you think about it, it's And Jimmy was a guest at the wedding,
right?
And he was a friend of the bride's, and his present to the bride was a handmade pair of shoes from him.
Obviously.
And what girl wouldn't love that?
No.
And she said to me after the wedding, she said, "Oh, could you do a picture of me receiving the shoes from Jimmy?" And I said, of course, no problem at all. And she said, he's got a shop in London, and he used to have a shop in Connaught Street in London called Jimmy Choo Couture, because he no longer owns his name. I found this out later. He sold his name. So when a girl buys Jimmy Choo shoes, they're no longer anything to do with Jimmy Choo.
Right. So he doesn't design them anymore, or
it's nothing to do with the company. He doesn't own his name at all.
Oh.
He sold out. He said he sold it for 10 million. His name.
Oh, he did all right then.
But he regrets. He said, Jimmy Choo now is probably one of the biggest brands in the world.
She's probably worth a lot more than 10 million now.
Yeah. But anyway, we went to the shop, and he came out and he presented the bride with the shoes. And this wasn't like a normal shoe shop. It was almost like a fabric shop. So there was all these rolls of fabrics on rolls and bits of shoes. And people would go in there and say, oh, I want that material for my heel and that material for the upper part. And then they would take the details down and then build the shoe. And then downstairs was a little workshop with a couple of people working down there making the shoes. But Jimmy handed the shoes. I took the photograph, and this was for the wedding album. And I said to him, oh, would you mind if I took your portrait, sir? Oh. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, where do you want to do it? And I said, oh, if you just sit on the ledge in your window. So he was window lit.
So it was all naturally lit, no flash.
I said, if you could just hold a shoe like this.
Yeah.
We'll just I said, it would take 5 or 10 minutes. And so I took these pictures. And then afterwards, I was talking to John Swannell, and John said to me, he said, you ought to send that up to the National Portrait Gallery. He said, I'll give you the contact who to send it to. So I approached them and they said, well, we don't have any pictures of Jimmy Choo. And they said, we'd love one in our archive. And they said, could you send one up and get it printed onto whatever paper that is archival? And then we'll submit it and we'll let you know if it's acceptable to be in our archive. And so I sent it up there. 3 months later, I got a message and just saying it's been accepted into their archive.
Wow.
And
what an honour.
You can actually just type in, Jimmy Choo in the National Portrait Gallery website, and this image comes up.
That image will come up. Fantastic.
So it's been on display once in there, but obviously they've got loads in the archive that they only display when something happens. But a lot of magazines have used this image because there aren't very many pictures of Jimmy Choo around. And so not many people know what he looks like. They just know they know the brand name. And that's why I got him to hold the shoe so that it kind of says, and you see it says on there
Jimmy Choo,
but it's got couture,
yes,
which you won't see the couture part on these shoes that a bride buys.
Not now.
No, because couture is the handmade bit.
The couture is fantastic. All right, one last picture before I ask you my final question for today. Henri Cartier-Bresson. I can't walk past a picture of this magnitude without asking you about it.
This is my first picture I ever bought.
As a collector?
Yeah, as a collector. I probably had it over 25 years. And I was with the girlfriend I was with at the time. I was tell her about documentary photography and about layers and about Cartier-Bresson. And one day she said, for God's sake, she goes, just go and buy the print. She goes, you've got a book of his. She goes, just go and buy it. Yeah. And I bought it, and it was a fraction of what it is. I mean, I bought it for hundreds of pounds back then.
And it's signed.
It's signed by him, and I got it from one of the galleries in America. But the reason I love this picture, and I see it every morning when I come out of my bedroom, because it's a type of photograph that I like to take. It's called Simeon Le Rotonde. It's not, you don't see this image that often unless
you actually... It's not a very familiar one to me.
No, it's not. No. But I love it because, it's got 4 pairs of things happening in the image. It's got foreground interest. It's got interaction between people. They're looking at each other. You can see every person in there. You can identify everyone. And
nobody's overlapping.
No one's overlapping. Everyone's in their own spaces. And it's kind of like, it's a perfect layered picture of a moment in time. And you even got 2 dogs playing there. So you've got random dogs in the picture, which again, and it's that thing that Cartier-Bresson coined, the phrase, the decisive moment. And that certainly is a decisive moment there. I've always wanted to go there because you can go to this place. I just thought, wouldn't it be wonderful just to go and recreate the picture there even?
That's wonderful.
But yeah, that was my into collecting some photographs.
What a lovely gallery. Right, I'm going to ask you a question. It's the one I end all interviews with. What is your why? Mark, I've known you for many, many years now. I've never had the opportunity to ask you this question.
It's my life, Neil. I'm not able to do anything else in this life. I'm a photographer, and I've been blessed with being able to have a life and earn a living from something I love doing. And if I couldn't do this, I don't know what I would be doing. I certainly wouldn't have had the richness in my life of being able to photograph the people and the places if I wasn't a photographer. So it's opened many doors for me over my life, and I guess it'll continue to do that, hopefully. So yeah, that's kind of my why, really. It's a lifestyle, it's a passion, and I'm one of the fortunate ones that has been able to have a career following my passion and lifestyle.
And my thanks this week to Mark Seymour. A real privilege to hear and talk about his photographic life. And that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and you'd like to walk a little further together, then the Extra Mile edition, number 130, is waiting for you. It's our extra show for those who support this podcast through Patreon. You go the extra mile for me, so I go the extra mile for you. And the really special thing about this show is that our community more often than not, the stars of the actual show, The Extra Mile, that is. We find out about our wonderful community through the Shoot the Breeze chats that I have, projects and ideas, inspiration, all that kind of thing. That's what The Extra Mile is really about. This week, Extra Miler Dennis Linden joins me, Dr. Dennis Linden, for part 2 of his story, the doctor and the photographer who documented his very recent heart transplant story, producing a book called A Heart Transplant Photo Diary.
On this week's Extra Mile.
Yeah, I have to admit, the book has only a fraction of the number of photographs I've taken, but your perspective on life when you're laying in a hospital bed in the ICU for weeks is the monitors, the numbers, everything's about the numbers. What is your ID number? The equipment around you all has numerical serial numbers on it. Your performance, your life is measured in what is the index, what is the number. So I focused a lot on those kind of details, which you would look at a number and you'd say, well, so it's a number on a piece of equipment. But when you're the patient, that number on the piece of equipment is your lifeline. So it becomes very, very personal.
Our PS to the show is to come, but before that we need a play-out song just to make some final frames to, or think about what's been said today. And it's from an artist not featured to date. I don't think I've played a song by Elijah Aaron before. No, I haven't. A perfect song to meander the path a little further with. It's a song called Where We Go.
Promise me you'll come with me when I go. Stay with me. Take my hand, I won't let go. I know everything's light enough. Oh, the sun burns so much brighter now, and the warm light glows like fire now. And you know I won't let go. No, wherever you go, I go. Speak to me. Tell me all that your heart dreams. And stay with me till the morning sunlight sings. I know everything's light enough. Oh, the sun burns so much brighter now, and the warm light glows like fire now. And you know I won't let go. No, I know everything's lighter now. Oh, the sun and moon burn so much brighter now, and the warm light glows like fire now. Oh, the years come up and go. Oh, the seeds we plant, every stitch you sow. And you know I won't let go. Oh no, wherever you go, I go.
Elijah Aaron and Where We Go. Wonderful song. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. Thank you so much, genuinely, from my heart, for supporting this show. It's I think the community that we've built is a really, really special, unique community. I really do. There's some fabulous stuff coming up soon where extra milers are going to be a part of further, if you like, pop-up communities. Dennis Linden, actually, my guest on the Extra Mile this week, he's going to be running a special on making zines and small books, or larger books, I suppose, come to that matter. But because of the experience that he's had, that very personal experience making his heart transplant diary, then I thought he'd be a perfect person to start this process with. In fact, it was Dennis's idea. Sorry, Dennis, I almost claimed that. So yes, my thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT, Michael Mixon for your further research, sir, Andrea Gilpin, who's across Instagram, and Kelly Mitchell, who looks after our Facebook members. A postscript for the show, a PS. Today, it's from Robert Frank. I know you know who Robert Frank is, but for the sake of my other listener, Robert Frank was a Swiss-American photographer, best known for his groundbreaking book, The Americans, a raw and unfiltered look at 1950s America that redefined documentary photography. Born in 1924 in Switzerland, he emigrated to the States, and with a Guggenheim Fellowship, he traveled across America, capturing everyday life. I think that sounds like one of the best projects, doesn't it? He covered beauty, loneliness, contradiction. His work is described as unconventional, often grainy and blurred, but it was always deeply human. And that word is what I'm, full pun intended now, focusing on for our PS today. And it beautifully connects too to this month's assignment, doesn't it? Oh, you'll appreciate it does when I read it. So from Robert Frank, there is one thing the photograph must contain: the humanity of a moment.
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.